here for Memoryz, and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Pascal Francis, and I am a caregiver for roughly 15 or so years now.
Okay, and can I ask which member of your family are you a caregiver for?
My grandmother,
Okay, okay. And what was the diagnosis like for you and your family when you found out that your grandmother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia?
you referring to the beginning stages?
Yeah.
So I moved back to DC after college, and I moved home like most graduates do. And she began calling me at work, asking me what day of the week it was. And these little things weren't just adding up. So I knew that Alzheimer's ran in my family. So after about a month or two, I said, okay, we need to go to the doctor. And, we made an appointment with neurology, did several rounds of testing, and that's when she got diagnosed. Very early on, in the very early stages. So I don't want to say we caught it early, but perhaps we did catch it. We're at the point where she was able to get on some medicine to slow down the progression in the beginning.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, it's great that you're able to catch it early and be proactive. I guess my next question would be,
Yeah, my grandmother was
oh,
Oh, I was just saying the very sharp women. So I knew something was off, and I knew since it ran in my family, I just need to be proactive as soon as possible.
for sure. I think that was great for you and for her and for your whole family that you were able to be proactive and kind of take those initial steps. I guess my next question would be about support in your family. Are you the sole caregiver for your
Hmm.
grandmother, or do you have other like brothers or sisters or parents or cousins that also help out with caregiving? Like, what does that support structure look like for you?
Can you repeat it? You stalled out a little bit.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. I was just saying, my next question would be around family support. Are you the sole caregiver for your grandmother, or do you have support from friends or other family members?
I am the sole caregiver. I do have a small family. I have a good set of friends that I consider family that are very helpful. I mean, they have keys to my house. They come over when I need them. They maybe run errands for me. So, of course, I don't have as much help as I would like or support as I would like, but my support system is very, they're very, I'm very grateful for them.
For sure, for sure. So I guess because you have that kind of more tight-knit support system, do you ever feel really isolated when you're caregiving? And then what, I guess, if you do, then what are some things you do to kind of combat and kind of feel connected to others?
That's probably been one of the biggest things is isolation. Caregiving is a very lonely journey. In the beginning, I was really lonely. I still get lonely now, but what I do to combat it, I'm just I'm kind of used to it. I'm the only child,
Mhm.
so I'm used to being alone. But it's hard for people to really empathize and put themselves in my shoes, especially since I've been a caregiver at such a young age. But I deal with it as best as I can.
For sure, for sure. And I guess I have a lot of respect for you because from having couple of these interviews, caregiving just seems like a really like a full-time job, like a really big task. So to be able to take on so much of that by yourself is really admirable.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
how do you, I guess my next question would be like, how do you make time for yourself and to practice self-care even though you have this big role?
So self-care in the beginning, self-care was challenging. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's something called caregivers guilt. So, when we do take time for ourselves, in the beginning, I did feel guilty of, leaving the home or going to have fun, but it's needed because if I'm no good, then I'm no good to her. So normally I'll go to the gym, I'll go to the park, outdoor type things, restaurants, friends. I am able to get out once I got over the caregiving guilt aspect. And I know when I need time, I know when I need a moment, or, even since the pandemic, I mean, a couple of times I had to drive around the block. Um, so yeah, I do take time out for myself, and it's very important that all caregivers, not all caregivers, are able to get out and take time for themselves, which is a challenge. Um, and I thankfully I am, but for those who are not, if you read, if you paint, anything to keep your mind off of, something to do for you, just 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something you just do solely for you, that will boost your spirits.
For sure, for sure. And I think it's really great that you like learn the importance of self-care, because I think that's something we've heard a lot, is that if you don't take care of yourself and be the best version of yourself, you're not going to be the best caregiver you can be. But
That's true.
I really want to echo that point of caregiver guilt, because I feel like it's such a common theme. So I guess, how did you learn to overcome that, or um, stop believing in caregiver guilt so much? I guess, how did you start to feel less guilty about taking care of yourself?
Um, I was probably falling apart, and a lot of people, see me as this, big, strong person, but on the inside, I'm literally watching my best friend every day lose a little bit more of herself. So I was falling apart, and people weren't really picking up on it because I'm really good at, just going with the flow and putting on a face. And I just had to talk with myself, and I had to get it together. And it was hard in the beginning, but after a while, I just knew it was important for me, because if not, then I wasn't going to be good to her or myself.
For sure, for sure. And I think I have a lot of respect for you for being able to take that journey, because especially at such a young age, being confronted with having to take care of someone in this state, it can be really hard to leave them and remember to do things for you. So I think it's really
Mhm.
important that we sometimes just sit down and have those kind of conversations with ourselves, for sure. So thank you for sharing. I guess my next question would be, I noticed that you're like super active on social media and really open about your journey. What in particular drew you to social media, and what particular drew you to share your journey about caregiving on social media?
Um, when I did feel lonely, I thought, perhaps other people are going through the same thing. And shortly after I started vocalizing my journey, um, initially I started with the Alzheimer's walk, and friends and family and people on social media would start joining my team. And then unfortunately, people were coming to me saying, I don't know, what to do. I think my mom is sick. And I was just so grateful, because I didn't have anybody to go to and say, oh my God, I think, my grandmother is sick. So I was grateful that they were able to come to me, and I could, empathize with them and give them some suggestions on what to do, since I had been through that firsthand prior to them coming to me. So I think it's important that I share my story, because it's part of who I am. I love to joke, and I have fun, and I go out, and I can be a partier, and I can be serious, and I can be in the boardroom and the whole nine. But being a caregiver is my number one job. It's my best job. It's the hardest job I've ever done. But I wanted people to know that that's who I am, and that if they're going through it, then they're not the only one. So that's why I share my story.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's something I've heard from a lot of caregivers who are on social media, that they feel really compelled and responsible for sharing their story to help other people who, when there weren't necessarily resources for you to get help. So, and I have a lot of respect for being able to see like the almost silver lining, because it's a really difficult life experience, but you're using it to help other people. And I think that's amazing that you're using your platform to do that. I guess I kind of want to transition into the more advice aspect of the conversation. Um, well, I guess, what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself as a caregiver since going through the experience of the diagnosis over the past 15 years?
The biggest thing I've learned is that you get strength from anywhere, from out of nowhere. You think that you haven't nowhere to give, you're exhausted, but you still continue to go the extra mile. And sometimes you don't know how it's gonna pan out, but somehow it always works out. And I think that the out view is very important. Obviously, you're not going to always be positive. There's no cure for Alzheimer's. So eventually there's going to be a horrible, at the end of the road, it's going to be horrible. I know it's going to be horrible. I'm going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. But I just think that oh God, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself?
Oh, yes. Okay. So just the strength. Yeah, you just get strength out of nowhere. And that's really been helpful. You just dig deep, and most of the time it works out. And 9 times out of 10.
Awesome. And I guess on those kind of days when it's a bit harder and you're feeling a bit down, what are some things you tell yourself to remind yourself that you can pull strength from anywhere?
I believe in self-affirmations. I tell myself I can do it. I'm a badass, excuse my language. I'm very, even on my worst day, I'm still probably, my biggest supporter outside of my family and friends. So I just tell myself, you got to get it done. And I do things because I don't have some people to help me get it done. I have a lot of help. I do have aides and caregivers that help me, but at the end of the day, it's solely on me. And that's, my grandmother's responsibility, as I mentioned before.
I'm sorry, can you just give me 1 second? I'm just going to pause. I'll be right back in 1 second.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I guess it is really important to just kind of constantly give yourself those like self-affirmations. Because there is a lot of power in attitude, right? Your attitude determines your altitude. And if you're constantly telling yourself positive things, it's going to reflect in your actions and your attitude for your loved one. I guess my next question would be about time management, because there's so many different things that you have to juggle as a caregiver. So I guess what are some strategies you use to remember everything, stay on top of things, make sure you're scheduling enough time for yourself? Because there's only 24 hours in the day, and it feels like you need 25 to be a caregiver. So how are some ways you manage your time?
I utilize my resources as best as possible. And I know a lot of people don't have ample resources, which is unfortunate. But if you can get someone to come in a couple of hours a day, depending on the stage of your loved one, is needed. It's needed for you to get your self-care or go to the grocery store. I use my phone, the calendar reminders on my phone. I have to-do lists everywhere. If it's out there, I use it. And it's only 24 hours in a day. And sometimes I'll write a list. I have a big whiteboard. I write a list. And if I don't get to it and I just get one thing done, then that's a successful day for me. So yeah, definitely use your resources if you can, and don't be afraid to reach out to resources and keep calling and keep following up with people. If people say they're going to call you back and they don't, call again, ask for an update, call once a week. I called the program 6 months, once a week, because I needed help. So, and finally it came through, but it took almost 6 to 8 months. Yep. And I called. It was to the point where I would call them. I could tell they're on the phone like, oh, it's her again.
Well, I think that's great, like persistence, determination, right? And knowing what you really want, what you really need for support. So I think it's awesome that you were able to get that out after 6 to 8 months. Like, that's amazing. I guess my next question would be more about your grandmother, your relationship. So I guess what was your relationship before the diagnosis, and how has it changed since the diagnosis?
Well, my grandmother raised me, my grandmother and my mother, and my grandmother has always been my biggest supporter, my best friend. I cooked in the kitchen with her probably before I could walk. We would hang out. We would go everywhere. To shows, to bars, to anywhere, vacations. And now, obviously, she's not mobile enough to go out the house these days. But up until about 3 years, I would still take her in the car, and she was reluctant. She was scared to get out of her normal environment. But once she was out, we would go to family and friends' homes to cookouts and sometimes to restaurants and sometimes even to the coffee shop. And those memories are still, I still hold them very close to me because we used to do those things together. So even though she had become sick, I still tried to remain or have some sense of normalcy.
Mhm. And I guess how has your relationship changed now over the past since the diagnosis?
Well, now she's mostly nonverbal, but I can tell with her eyes that, she knows I'm here. She still knows who I am, thankfully, and I don't think that she'll ever really forget that who I am because we're just that close. And I can feel her, and that she can feel me, and she sits on the couch with me, and we rub each other's arms and watch TV. So it has changed, but now it's just more of a connection outside of the extracurricular activities. We still are very connected. I can see myself, I can see her and me almost daily of things I do or how I talk or my actions. So we're connected. We'll always be connected.
For sure. And I think it's amazing that you had such a close-knit relationship with your grandparent. Like, I feel like that's not something we hear a lot these days. I guess because you guys were so close before the diagnosis, how has this experience been for you emotionally, seeing her the way she is now?
Oh, it's been traumatizing. Um, I mean, if there was a worse word for traumatizing, I would probably use that word. It's been hard on me, mentally, physically. I mean, the whole everything. Because I feel like I'm dying with her. I mean, every day I feel like a part of me is, leaving as she is. So it has been really hard on me. But um, I just try to make the best of it. And even now, if she says a couple words, if she smiles, or she opens her big blue eyes, it makes my day.
Wow. No, I mean, I think it's great that you're still able to kind of have a little bit of positive outlook
Hmm.
at what's going on, because I know that can be really challenging, especially given the situation. So I guess my next question would be, how are you able to see the silver lining and still try to see the good in the situation despite how hard it's been on you?
The silver lining would be that I'm able to advocate on her behalf. Like I mentioned before, she's nonverbal. She needs everything done for her. She's pretty much at the last, almost final stage, and with Alzheimer's. So I can't imagine. I actually put her in respite care when I went on vacation for about 5 days. She came back dehydrated. She lost about 10 pounds. And I paid out of my pocket on top of what insurance paid. And this is how she came back to me in 5 days. So I just know that if she was not with me, it would be much worse. So I'm just happy I'm able to advocate on her behalf. And I know a lot of elderly do not, which is so unfortunate. And it actually breaks my heart that a lot of our elderly folks don't have anyone. So that's the silver lining for me, that I'm able to help her. And I try to help, if I see another elderly person and they need help, I just love elderly people. So it's probably because of my grandmother, but I would want someone to help my grandmother or my loved one if they needed help. That's just, compassion goes a long way.
For sure, for sure. Wow, like I just couldn't even imagine. Like, as you said, like, it has been like a traumatizing experience. So the fact that you're able to still see like good in what you're going through is just really admirable. I guess my next question has been, the last couple months has been really shaking for everyone across the world, right? So how has recent events affected your caregiving experience?
Well, like everyone is, trying to do the best they can the past couple of months to stay safe. I try to control what I can. Even Michelle Obama said in her book, To Control What You Can. And so during the pandemic, I make sure my friends don't even come to visit. It's only the people that come in the house are the caregivers that help me assist with her. I've been very careful when I go out. Obviously, I'm practicing caution. Even in the beginning, I was getting groceries delivered because I didn't want either of us to get sick. It has been challenging, but we've made it work. And yeah, I'm almost glad that she doesn't know we're in a pandemic, because I think she would be going crazy not being able to socialize and go out, because that's who she used to be.
For sure, for sure. And I guess again, it's super admirable because like this pandemic has been so riveting for so many people around the world, and to be able to juggle that on top of being a caregiver must have been a really difficult experience for you.
Yeah.
I guess my next question would be about since you're a pretty big advocate for caregiving and dementia on social media, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about dementia or about caregiving?
Misconceptions that maybe the person who does have dementia is still not there, or they're a lost cause. They're not. They don't want to obviously be in the state they're in, and they can't help it. It's not them. It's their brain. That's a misconception that people just write them off and think they're crazy. Back in the old days, people just like, oh, she's cuckoo, and that would be it. So they are still there. They still know. Like I mentioned before, she knows. She sometimes even repeats things I say because she's always, in the room with me. So if I'm working on a telephone, she repeats things I say, and I'm thinking, oh man, she really is listening to me, even though she acts like she's not. So that's probably one of the misconceptions. Far as caregiving, a misconception, I don't really know if there's many a misconception. What people think it is probably, it's hard, it's tough, all of that is true, but it's doable. So if that had to be a misconception, it's definitely doable if you utilize your resources and trial and error. And that's the biggest thing, is trial and error. That's how I've been able to be, I don't want to use the word successful at caregiving, but that's how I've been able to survive this long, with trial and error and listening and reading and researching and asking doctors questions. So that, just keep pressing.
For sure. And I think that kind of brings me into something I want to transition into, as you've been doing this for a very long time. You said about 15 years. So I guess what would be the biggest piece of advice you'd offer to someone who's recently become a caregiver?
Oh man, the biggest advice, initially, it's a shock factor. You don't know what to expect. It's the fear of the unknown, and really to take it one day at a time, to write a list and utilize your resources, and try to attack whatever it is at different angles. And if one person tells you no, or one person, you call a person and you say you need help, and they say, well, you're above income, or you don't qualify, there's other programs, there's other resources depending on your state and where you live. Go to your neighbors, your support system, your church, wherever. There's plenty of people that have been in these situations that can help. So I think if you start there, when you first get into it, and then just, if you start there and don't freak out. And I know that's horrible to think, like, well, how could someone tell me don't freak out? I kind of have this motto: I allow myself 5 minutes to freak out. 5 minutes, like, oh my God, how am I going to get, I just freak, 5 minutes. And then I say, okay, how am I going to fix it? And I just think like, who do I know? Who can I call? Who can help me? And then little by little, it gets better, and I figure it out.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's a great point to end on, like a really like positive note that, you can get through this, and, just reach out to your support system and do your research and remind yourself that you're more than capable of getting through whatever you're experiencing right now. And I think that's not only a model for caregiving, but just a model for life in general.
Yeah, I mean, even if folks don't have family, there's still resources out there to have a support system. There's Alzheimer's support groups, and I'm sure there are tons online now since the pandemic. And that, there's things out there if you don't have someone in your immediate family to help you.
For sure, for sure. Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you again for sitting down with us and chatting today. It was super, super great hearing your perspective.
Thank you.
If people want to reach out to you on Instagram and maybe get a little bit more of your story, like where can they find you?
Oh yes, my Instagram handle is B as in Bravo, the number 33 and nice. So be nice, but instead of the E, it's a 3. So B33NICE.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hopefully everyone watching will go follow at B33NICE. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us.